Alright, so I'm Aaron Heiser, Maker's Leather Supply, and this is part 2 of making the Kodiak backpack kit provided through Tandy Leather. And in this video we're going to take all the pieces that we prepared in the last video for sewing, and we're going to sew all the little things that we prepared. We're not really putting the whole bag together yet, but all the little extras and pieces and rolled edges and all that stuff is getting sewed together in this video. For the video, we're going to use a Cobra Class 18 sewing machine. Alright, it's just kind of a tabletop type sewing machine, so it's got a flatbed. And for all this work that we're going to do, a flatbed is really nice. Everybody that watches my videos knows that my favorite machine is the Class 26, which is next to it over there. And it's got all the same capabilities as this machine, but it's a cylinder arm machine, so that you could sew things on a curve and get into tighter spaces and things like that. But for this video, I chose to use the 18 just to kind of show off its capabilities and things like that, and the advantages of it being a flatbed sewing machine. Now, you do not have to have a sewing machine to build this bag, but it helps. There is a lot of sewing involved in this bag, and if you want to hand sew it, that's great. But it doesn't have to be hand sewn at all. And here I've picked up my very first piece to put together, and I've already realized that I forgot to do something to it. So I'm going to grab my double-sided tape and I'm going to roll over the top edge of this this front panel here, like that. I can't believe I forgot this one. Okay, hopefully we won't find too many pieces like this. So before, we stuck the zipper onto it and got that ready to sew, but what I forgot to do is do our rolled edge top that's going to overlap that zipper chain there, and that completes the sew line at the top. So this is going to be a couple of pieces of tape because it'll have to go across the zipper areas. Just kind of laying it down. Alright, and we're doing all this just like what we did the other pieces, except I forgot to do them on this piece, and that's why we're working on it now. Apologize. So as we pull the tape off, or the paper off the back of the tape, we're just going to roll that edge right over the top of it, hold it down good. Get this third little piece folded over here, we will be caught up and ready to start stitching. Now, generally, if you watch any of my videos, I like contrasting stitching. I like, if I'm using a dark leather, I'll use a lighter stitch, or maybe even a colored stitch. I love orange with brown leather and stuff, but on this one I am using a darker stitch color. It's just a brown. Everything else about this bag is dark, and so I just kind of am keeping with the theme of it. And then also, because when I do my turned edges and things like that, if I use a lighter one, and when you turn the bag and maybe one of the stitches isn't tight enough or something, you can see that in there. And if you can see that lighter colored stitching showing out, then that's not cool, not good at all. Okay. So for this piece, I'm going to zip those little areas back up a little bit, and we're just going to sew right along. Zip my thread up in there. We're going to sew right along the very top, and then we're going to go down and around the zipper cutout, and then across the top again, down and around again, and across the top again. That's our stitch line for this piece. This is the most complicated. Everything else is pretty straightforward, but this one we gotta go around that zipper cutout. So I'm gonna start out with a back stitch. And the good news is most of the pieces we're going to sew, the edges of these are going to be inside the seams of the bag, so you don't really have to worry about as much back stitching and things like that. But you still should do at least one back stitch, just so it all holds on. I've got this machine set up to go pretty fast, but on most of these areas I'm going to go slower, just so that everybody can keep up and we don't make any mistakes. If we do make a mistake, I'm not going to cut it out of the video, I'm just going to show you how to fix it. Alright, so I got up to that zipper cutout there, and now I'm going to sew down and around that zipper cutout using the edge of my presser foot as my center foot as my guide, I guess you can say, to keep it straight on the zipper. Alright, now, what I'm about to do, a lot of people don't like to do. I don't like to do it, but we're going to do it. And that is, we're going to sew through the metal chain of this zipper. Okay? When I get to that area, I'm going to not use the motor of the machine. I'm just going to use my hand wheel over here, and I'm going to hand wheel it down through that area so that I can make sure that our needle finds its way in between the zipper pieces. If I just went nuts trying to sew and go straight through it, I might hit directly on one of the metal zipper pieces with my needle, and that could potentially damage my machine, knock it out of time, break a needle, who knows. So here we are, sewing through a zipper. Sometimes it can break your thread. We're going to hope it doesn't. If it does, we're going to rethread the machine and do it again. See, like right there, I'm right dead on a piece of zipper there, so I'm just going to move it a little bit. There we go. We have sewn through and around that zipper. Now we're going to come back up the other side. And when we're done with the entire piece, we'll check on the back to make dang sure that we actually sewed through the zipper tape, that fabric part of the zipper. This is it's pretty easy to get off track and actually miss that tape on the back side, and then, well, that stitch line's useless if it's not holding the zipper on. Alright, so we're back up at the top. I'm going to drop my edge guide back down where it belongs, and we're just going to sew right across the top here until we get to the other zipper area. To the other one, now we'll do the exact same thing. We're going to go nice and slow down and around the zipper using our center foot, the very edge of our center foot as the edge guide to keep the line straight. Okay, now we're back to sewing through the zipper part again. So I'm going to use my hand wheel and make sure that my machine stays safe and my needle stays safe, and I don't have to stop and repair a machine in the middle of all this. It's really funny, sometimes I'll sew through 10 or 15 zippers and not break a thread, and then sometimes I'll sew the same zipper 6 times and break a thread every time. That's the way it works. As Clint Eastwood said, do you feel lucky? Alright, so we're going to sew around the other side of the zipper tape here. Against the wall there. I've got this machine pressed up pretty close to the wall there. Drop my edge guide back down. We're going to go right off to the edge of the leather. Give me a little back stitch in action. And this piece is done. So as I check this piece, again, I'm going to look at the back and make sure that my stitching is in the tape of the zipper, and it is. So we're good. I will later trim off the ends of the zippers and we'll call that good. Trim off this excess thread here. All right, so there's the first piece. And now we're going to grab the second piece. So the second piece I'll grab is these gusset pieces, the sides of the gusset. Okay, and all I'm doing on these is sewing those little squares down. All right, real simple procedure. We're just going to sew them on. And then later on, we'll also join these two pieces of gusset to each other with that bottom piece that we've got cut out over there. Now this Kodiak leather, like I said, it's a bit of an oil tan, I guess. And the one drawback I have to oil tans is when I'm sewing them, they tend to want to grab the table. They don't slide as easily on the table. So a lot of the time I'll just pick up both ends of it and just kind of guide it through the machine that way, as opposed to generally I would hold it down to the table and guide it that way. And what that does is it keeps one end from dragging more than the other, and it helps to keep my stitch line straight. Now when sewing around corners, I do all my turns while the needle is down in the leather. I put it all the way down, let it come up just a tiny bit, and I make my turn. In doing that, it ensures that two things. It ensures that the stitch lengths remain the same throughout the turn, and it also makes sure that I don't skip a stitch. If you turn the leather at the wrong time, you could have the needle go down and the shuttle hook not grab the thread, and then when the needle comes back up and moves on to the next hole, you now have a hole there with no thread in it. Okay, so this piece is ready for the next step. And there, that sucker's sewn right on there. And I'll do the exact same thing on the next one, but I don't feel the need to make you watch me do that because it's literally the exact same thing. So here we'll grab, this is the pleated pocket. The only thing I'm going to sew on this right now is just straight across the top to sew down our folded edge, our rolled edge that we did. I'll start out with a back stitch, and then we'll go forward. It's just a straight line. I've got my edge guide, so I'm pretty comfortable with just putting the hammer down and getting across it. Here we are at the end, a couple of back stitches. And that's how I normally sew. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. The next piece I grabbed, this is the pocket from the inside of the bag, the laptop pocket. And same thing, we're just going to sew directly across the top where we did that rolled edge on it, and that's all it'll need. There it is. Now let's see what we grab next. Alright, this one will be a little bit more challenging. This is the top flap for the bag. The very first thing I'm going to sew is around the perimeter of it, where I've got those nice rounded edges there, because while I'm sewing these, I would hate for that to catch on the edge of the table or something and pull those corners off, you know, pull them off the tape where I worked so hard to get them nice and even. So I'll sew that first. So I'm going to start up here in one corner, do a couple of back stitches, and then we're going to go forward. And when it comes down to the corner, I'm going to slow down a little bit so that I can actually do it right. And I want to keep it pressed down to the machine a little bit, because again, it's going to try to push those little rolls that we created down, and I don't want them to come off the tape. So there we are. And we're back to another corner. Alright, so there's the perimeter of the flap. Now I have to sew those little squares onto it that we did earlier. And I'm just going to do them just like I did the gusset, the ones on the gussets. I'm just going to sew around the outsides. Around the outside, around the outside. No? So? Oh, I need my truck. Alright, so here we go. I don't go quite as fast on these little pieces. Alright, and then when I get back to the beginning of it, I didn't do any back stitching in the beginning, because since I'm going all the way around, I just have to stitch over my first couple of stitches. So there it is. Now, just like that other one over there, I'm going to sew this one on the exact same manner, and by doing it, or I'm not going to bore you by doing it on camera, so I'll set it over here in my sew in a minute pile. Now, the next piece we have is the exact same thing, but smaller. This was the pocket flap piece. So we're going to sew around the exterior perimeter of it, and then we're going to sew the little squares on. Okay? I'll go ahead and sew around the outside here while it on camera, and then again I'll go off camera and sew the little squares on so we don't make a 3-hour video out of this. Alright, so again I'm going to throw this one into the sew in a little bit pile, okay, so that I can sew those little squares on there. And I think I've only got one more piece over here to do right this minute. This is that the full back piece, okay, and I'm just going to sew the rolled edge onto the top of it. Okay, once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, sew the rest of those little things down that I set over there in the pile, and when I come back, we'll put the gusset pieces together. There's 3 pieces: the right, left, and bottom of the gusset. We'll sew those 3 pieces together. Alright, so there you have it. That piece is sewn down as well. Again, I'm going to pause the video, sew on the rest of these squares and stuff, and when I come back, we're going to attach the 3 pieces of the gusset together. Alright, so all those pieces are now sewn together. Now we're going to attach our side gusset pieces to our little bottom gusset piece. And we're going to do that with what I believe is called a lap seam, I think. I'm not sure. The problem is, I taught myself to do a lot of things and I never learned the proper terminology for it. So sometimes when I'm describing one of these processes to someone, they're like, no, that's not what that is. So here's what I've done. I've got one of my, let's get this one out of the way just to not have confusion with it. I've got one of my sides here, and I've got my rectangular piece that is the bottom gusset, and I've put them finished side to finished side, and I'm going to sew right along about a ½ inch in on the edge of my skive mark there, and yeah, I'm going to sew these 2 together just like that. So I'll do a little bit of a back stitch here. Again, that's going to be inside of a seam later, so you don't have to do a lot of back stitching, but you do want it to hold. Okay, and then we're going to go forward with it, but like I said, I'm going to hold this up some so that it doesn't grab the table on me. And we're just going to sew straight across there. Okay, so there we are. Finished that. Now, this is where it comes into being called a lap seam. Okay. Trim off my threads so I don't get confused later with which ones I'm using. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this back like this, and I'm going to sew it again. Okay, I know that's hard to see from there, so I'm going to show you. We have, there we go. We have that right there sewn. Okay, so it's like that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it back against that piece right there, and I'm going to sew down it. And again, that's one of the things that gives the bottom of our bag a lot of rigidity and strength, is that it has that double seam there. Okay. So here we go. We're going to do a couple of back stitches, and then we're going to go forward, and I'm sewing about 1/4 of an inch from the folded over seam here. There we go. I'll give you a close-up of it so you can see what that looks like, and then I'm going to do the same thing to apply the other side of the gusset to it, making one long continuous gusset. So there it is, right there. Makes a very nice strong seam that looks really attractive as well. And that's what we like, strong and attractive. Okay, so same thing. I'm going to lay this one on top of it, finish side to finish side. Make sure that it runs perfectly parallel and on top of the other pieces there. And I'm going to sew the two pieces together just like that. Let me grab a clip right quick just to help me hold all this in place. These little binder clips are worth their weight in gold in my shop. I use these things for everything. So, help us hold everything straight and make sure nothing moves while we sew. I don't feel a need to try to stick those two ends together with tape. I just need to make sure that these two pieces don't move from each other. Not quite as lined up down here as I needed, so we're repositioning it a little bit. Alright, a couple of back stitches and we'll sew across that. Okay, and then we're going to fold it over and sew it down to create another lap seam. Now it doesn't matter if you fold it towards the small part or towards the long part under here, as long as they're both folded in the same general way. So this one over here, I folded it back under the side gusset piece, so on this side I'm going to also fold it under the side gusset piece. Otherwise it would look kind of funny and they wouldn't match. Spin this thing around so it's under the machine the way I like it. Alright. that gusset piece is now sewn together. Alright, so there's that piece in all its glory. Gonna hit the pause button here and decide what we're gonna do next, and we'll be back. Alright everybody, we actually decided that that's a good stopping place for this this particular video. In the next video, what we're going to be doing is actually assembling bag pieces. So it's finally going to start coming together. So until next time, I'm Aaron Heiser of Maker's Leather Supply, and thank you so much for watching.